Hey there, this is Kat. Thank you for joining me on my Stand Out and Grow live podcast. Today I have a very special guest. It is Brian Davidson, who is co-founder of Matchnode. I hope I'm saying that right. And he's going to come on and we're going to talk about lead generation and e-commerce conversion with ads. So whether they're Google ads or Facebook ads or social media ads, whatever the case may be. He's the expert though. So without further ado, let me bring Brian on. Hey,
Hi,
Brian.
Kat. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining me on
Thanks for having me.
Stand Out and Grow podcast. So if you could just intro yourself and give people, viewers, listeners, a little background about who you are and what you do.
Sure. So we started Matchnode 10 years ago, being hyper focused on conversion. But I've really been in the digital advertising space since the very beginning, going back to when I graduated college in 2004. I skipped 2 years being a ski bum, and then I dove full in on 2006. So I was running ads back in the days when Facebook ads were right-hand rail on desktop only. So I've seen a lot of changes to the platforms over the years, and mostly for the better and for the more fun.
Oh, good. Awesome. Okay. And then your agency is a digital marketing agency
Yeah, so we're a digital marketing agency focused first on paid social, but also direct response ads, Google ads.
Perfect.
We do also offer organic services and other creative services and technical services as well. But we really made our name in the space with paid social, particularly as Facebook and Instagram really scaled as businesses and their ad platforms became more and more powerful. We've really ridden that wave for the last 10 years.
Awesome. Okay, so let's talk about lead generation ad campaign. We'll talk about lead generation first, because I know that when I talk to clients or people that try to create conversion, lead gen is one conversation, and then e-commerce is always, of course, another one. So let's start with lead generation. So kind of give us a background kind of premise on how you guys are leveraging it. How are you guys making that work for your clients?
Sure. So I think the first thing to think about is there is no out-of-the-box solution. Every lead gen campaign and design should be designed specifically for the business that you are working with. We just kicked off today a new client that actually has a website that helps agents enroll people into Obamacare. So our lead generation for that is going to be very, very different than the lead generation we do for WB Easy, which is the NPR wing in Chicago. And our lead generation for them is actually based on newsletter signups. So it's very, very different of running someone to a content piece where you've blocked off the rest unless they give you an email, versus we're going to do an education series for this Obamacare client, getting people to learn about this platform. So first you need to think, what do I offer that's unique to my business, and really try to build your lead campaign around it. Then the second piece of the puzzle, particularly on social, is really, really good creative. So thinking about what's going to stand out in that feed. How can I get my click-through rate up as high as possible and drop my CPC as possible? Because where a lot of people struggle in lead generation is they're targeting a pretty small audience. So naturally, that means that you're going to have a much higher CPM and a much lower CTR.
Okay, hold on. You're saying CPC, CTM, CTR. Remember, keep in mind, my audience is your solopreneur, your small business owner, and maybe a business coach, an author, a speaker. So they're not going to know your CPCs and CTRs. So just be careful.
CPM is cost per 1,000 impressions. So the smaller your audience, generally, the more it's going to cost in terms of dollars for impressions. And the smaller your audience, the lower your click-through rate, meaning your ads are going to be less efficient, and you're also going to drive up that CPC. So one, it's important to have the best possible creative to stand out given your audience size.
Right.
Two, thinking about audience size, a lot of people make the huge mistake of saying, my audience is females 30 to 35. They live in the Midwest and they love cats. And they make their targeting really, really tight, especially on paid social. Well, and I think a lot of those misconceptions started around political ads, where things were very, very targeted around people.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, a lot of those targets on political ads are only because of the Electoral College. If we had a national election, the advertising would be very, very different. And generally speaking, the best way to target on paid social is not by having a very, very tight audience, but it's by having great creative that speaks to a broad but particular type of person.
Okay.
Those are two big things.
Okay. So you don't want it too broad, right? Because then you're going to capture people that it's not within the parameter. Is that correct? If you're
not
too
necessarily,
broad.
Not necessarily on your targeting. The majority of the targeting that we do has zero targeting, ages 18 to 65 plus, 21 to 65 plus if it's an alcoholic product.
Okay.
And our creative is what does all of the targeting.
Okay, so I'll give you an example. Let's say that we have a transmission manufacturing company, but people are calling him for transmission service.
Mm-hmm.
So two different audience, right? Two different audience, because the transmission manufacturing is really targeting that B2B business, whereas the person looking for transmission service is looking for that mechanic, that right. And so go ahead. Sorry.
So it'd be very important that your creative then speaks to those businesses and not towards the consumer.
Yeah.
And you need to try hard to make that delineation in both your copy as well as your creative.
Yes. Yeah. I think probably the big thing for a lot of business, and especially the small business that probably does their own ads or whatever, do the boost, what have you, is they don't think about the target audience, and the creative has a serious, right, combination effect there that really I've seen business owners boost like articles, like non-relevant stuff that's going to convert, right?
The first thing that I would suggest is never boost a post.
Okay.
You want to create an ad in Facebook example. You want to create an ad in Ads Manager and have it optimized towards a lead, either capturing that lead on platform or capturing that lead on your website and making sure that the Facebook pixel is installed properly. But boosting a post is going to get you nothing but engagement from bots, and you're literally lighting money on fire. I'd be shocked if any or all business owners in the last, let's say 2 years of boosting posts have gotten any sort of meaningful business from it.
Be careful, really Brian. Important. Be careful.
Somebody really important to make sure that you take the time to learn how to use the tools. Otherwise, you're literally lighting your ad budget on fire.
Yeah. Be careful. I think some of the small businesses will probably say that they get a lot of their business from boosting their own posts, but I don't know. Like, people would have to comment and drop a line. And
I'd love to see the comments. Please drop them in.
Awesome. Yeah. If you are boosting and you're having success, drop a comment, because Brian would love to hear from you, and he would love to have that conversation. Okay. So back to so lead generation. So can we talk about what lead generation is and why people run lead generation?
Sure. Well, there's a lot of reasons why you would run lead generation. But the bottom line is you're probably hoping to get some sort of business out of it eventually. It looks very different for a lot of different industries. I drive leads for telehealth companies, so people that enroll in health services. I drive leads for newsletters that get money from advertisers. I drive leads, like I said, for healthcare companies in the Obamacare space. So they're all very different, but they all really kind of want the same thing, and that's a qualified lead. They don't want spam. So trying to make sure that you're creating relevant content, but also not being too clickbaity, and making sure that you've put at least a few hurdles sometimes in front of people before they give you that lead information, to make sure they're a real person and to make sure that it's a considered purchase or a considered person entering your lead funnel.
Okay. Now, because you've been doing a lot of Facebook ads and you've been doing it for quite a while, I'm curious as to your feedback. And do you feel like the organic form on Facebook is preferred over driving traffic to a website?
The on-platform form on Facebook will generally give you less quality in terms of email capture, but it'll probably be cheaper.
Okay.
And they've also done a lot of innovating actually in the last 6 months. So they have a new product called lead filtering, which is really cool, where you can ask like a buying question, like, do you expect to be buying a transmission in the next 12 months? And it would optimize towards only people answering yes. I've actually seen a pretty cool deck from Facebook about their product launches that are in beta this year that they hope to have live in 2023. One of them is really cool, in which you start your lead on a form on Facebook, but you finish it on the website. They also just launched lead call ads, which are kind of interesting. My experience so far is they're pretty expensive, but calls are pretty important to some businesses. So I would say experiment with both, because there isn't one answer that's right or wrong, and trying to leverage those products in the best way possible. So like another thing they added to lead forms this year is rich creative.
Okay.
We just added a bunch of reviews for a client into their lead forms that they use on Facebook. And it's having a great pickup for us in terms of quality.
Nice. That's awesome. Okay. And then I had a question as you were talking, because one popped up and now it escaped me because you captivated me on the last part of it. It'll come to me and I'll get back to it. Oh no, here we go. Okay. So what about the, and this is on the organic form. What about the, I guess, how do you prevent from getting people that said, I didn't know what I was clicking, or, you know what I mean? You're messaging them and then they say, well, I didn't click on that. I don't know what you're talking about, or blah, 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 blah.
It's amazing how many people will give you that same response. And that's where I think that products like the lead filter, or putting a few roadblocks in front of people, sometimes asking for more information, turns people off. So usually those type of things happen when you ask for name and email and people just hit click. It's auto-populated and they hit click. So I would say if you're getting that case, put more roadblocks in front of people. Make it a longer form. Facebook even has a setting of more intent, where they make you swipe through a second screen before submitting that form. So putting friction in place is important to make sure you're not getting those really, really poor leads.
Okay. And that's great advice. I appreciate that. Okay. So let's segue now to e-commerce, because I know e-commerce can be very challenging, and I know that can be very expensive.
Sure. Well, I'd say that almost any marketing campaign get pretty expensive pretty quick if you don't know what you're doing.
Right.
I'd say the biggest thing on the e-com side is making sure your pixel is set up properly so that you're transmitting value back to Facebook, and or you're using things like Facebook Shops or Instagram Shopping, if appropriate, towards your product, to have the most possible chance for success.
Okay. And so let me just emphasize this for anyone who's viewing, in case they don't know. A pixel is just code. It's code drop on the back end of your website, so that when someone lands on the various pages, it's tracking behavior, it's tracking activity. So a pixel, if you ever hear a pixel, it's really important to your ad campaign. I feel like it is on Facebook or Instagram. You really need this pixel in place. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, then that's when you need to really consult with a professional to get that pixel dropped on your website, because that really is going to help you have a more successful campaign. Right, Ryan?
And to be clear, that might sound difficult. It would take someone who's kind of technical savvy 10 to 15 minutes to install on most websites. A lot of WordPress websites have a plugin that works right away. Shopify has a switch that you literally just toggle on and off. And if your developer is telling you it's going to take 5 or 6 hours to put, they're ripping you off. This is not hard. This is not hard to do. Early on in our business, we've got a technical lead on our team now who can code natively. But for years, I was essentially the technical lead as we were building the business. And people would ask me, do you know how to code? And I'd say, no, but I know enough to be dangerous. Right. So you don't need to be a giant, great developer to harness these tools. They're really easy to do. So even if you aren't a technically savvy person and you want to dive in, you could probably figure it out with a few YouTube videos, or you can leverage someone else to get that done for you in literally 30 minutes or so.
Right. And I would concur and I would agree, because if you are a little techie and you understand, it is like Brian said, a lot of the websites now have it where it's a plugin app or something on your site that it makes it really easy. They don't want to make it complicated. Trust me, they don't. They want you to, they want you to get it on there because it's only going to help your business. Absolutely.
It also only helps their business. Because, all the rumors of, well, Facebook must be listening to me, or it knows it's in my head, or whatever the conspiracy theory, tinfoil hat theories. Well, it knows what you're interested in because it sees the content that you're on, because everyone that's advertising has the pixel there. So it's a two-way street, in that you get better ads as a business owner, but you also get better ads, things that you're interested in as a consumer.
Yep. And so for e-commerce, I feel like there's even more relevance to have it, because if you're looking, Shopify is a powerful machine. It's powerful and it can do some amazing things. But if you don't have the tools in place, you're not going to be able to use the momentum of that power. Right.
Yes. Then it's just like boosting a post at that point. Yeah. You're just optimizing for link clicks. And trust me, Facebook will find someone or something to click that ad. Yeah. When you're optimizing for conversion, your cost per click is actually going to go up, but your conversion is going to go up even higher.
So can we talk about e-commerce then as far as creative? Because again, that's a different beast, right? Because it is a product driven. So how do you manage and overcome those challenges with e-com?
Well, the same thing first is that it matters on the product. So selling a ticket for the Chicago Bulls with an e-commerce ad doesn't necessarily mean the same as selling an ad or selling a t-shirt for a t-shirt company. So format is really important. So not just format in terms of still versus video, but also carousel or instant experience ads for some types of e-commerce products. Whereas probably more considered larger purchases, it's probably a larger single image ad or a video ad selling an experience. So it depends exactly what the product is. And so, sometimes if you're selling a product, it fits in one format, but an experience fits in another, or a more considered purchase fits in another. So I think the first piece of the puzzle is to test different ad formats on the different platforms. I think that's really important. So for Google, that could be Google Shopping, Performance Max, YouTube, search, testing all those different formats to find out what works best for your business. And the same on Facebook. So testing carousel versus video, carousel versus instant experience, letting the algorithm pull out your products for you rather than picking them one by one, and testing the various methods.
Okay, so that would be my next question is, when you guys do ads for e-coms, are you guys running multiple ads? Like how is that as far as like structurally what you guys are doing?
Sure. So best practice is to have at least one still and one video in all of your ad sets in Facebook. So one of each. More often than not, these days, we're actually seeing our images outperform our video.
Oh, wow.
But for some businesses, actually restaurants, Reels is by far the best placement right now. Yeah. So it's really important to think about customization for the different placements as well.
Okay. And that's very smart. Thank you for sharing. And I can see restaurants doing well with Reels, because once you see that sizzling food, it makes you hungry.
It's really easy to get good UGC. Because people love taking pictures of their food and posting it to all their friends and tagging the restaurant. So it's really easy to reach out and get permission to use, because they feel like hot shots now too.
Right. That's awesome. Well, cool. Okay. So now let's talk about price point. Because I think this question comes up a lot. People don't know how much to invest, and we can be hypothetical too if you need us to be, in regards to if someone had, let's say, a $5 product right? One $5 product. What's their investment for e-commerce? And, how long and what's the likelihood? Because you and I both know that this is a consistency game. It's not a one and done. There's no one and dones. You have to stay at it for it to work. It's just like investing in stock market. Just make sure that whatever you put out there is effective and it's good that you're doing right for the long haul. So tell me what your thoughts are in regards to how do you pick a budget based on what your product, good, or service is?
So let's talk about it really conceptually, and I'll boil it down to a simple question. It should be whatever you can afford to spend versus what are you okay losing. So if I know that I can invest $2 and get $5 back, and that hits my unit economics, I'm going to spend as much money as possible pouring it onto the engine to get as many sales as possible and seeing at what point does it decline. So I never want to think of a budget as a static thing. On the other hand, if I'm trying this advertising thing for the first time and I don't know what it's going to do, I'd say your budget should be a number that you're okay with losing. And like, well, we're going to learn one way or the other. Is this going to work for us? Right. So the way we approach it with clients is we start with a 90-day sprint. And I advise our clients to spend at least $100 a day. So we get enough learnings over that 90 days to figure out if this is going to work for them and if this is going to scale properly for them. The first job I had coming out of college, I was our director of social media and eventually became the VP of social media. But our ad budget was literally unlimited. If we drove leads at a specific cost and we learned our closing percent, we needed as many leads as possible. And we grew that company when I was there from like a $2 million company up to like a $36 million company when I left. It's a $200 million company today. So, and that was just by being very aggressive on the lead side and knowing that we had a really, really good sales team on the back end that could close those leads. So we were really aggressive with our ad spend because we knew our unit economics.
Okay. So what if someone can't afford $100 a day? And let me be hypothetical again too, Brian. So let's say that this person just started their business, maybe, and they set aside some money and their runway is maybe like 6 months, but they have a limit of $500 a month. I mean, should they even do them? That's what I'm trying to get at. Like, you know what I mean?
I think you can for less, but I would probably still have a larger daily budget and a shorter time horizon as far as like, okay, I'm going to run this for a week and see what happens. Pause, see what I learned, regroup, make some changes, maybe start again in 2 weeks.
Okay.
But so I would try to go a little more heavy on the daily ad spend. Because a key piece to Facebook is getting through the learning phase. And the learning phase is those 50 initial conversions, usually in 48 hours, and getting enough conversions in that the algorithm is optimized in the best possible way. Facebook's general statement is that your ads are 15% more effective once you get through that learning phase. So I would definitely probably lean on going a little bit bigger in my budget on a daily basis in a shorter time horizon if I'm extremely constrained.
Okay, that's great advice. That's great, because that's what I was kind of fishing for, is how would you guide someone in that kind of situation? Because everybody's in a different, right, in a different state of mind, a different bucket. And I think the big thing that I have learned from most businesses is they don't know how to allocate a marketing budget, right? They don't know where to start. They don't know how to really think about that,
And that's pretty normal, actually. So like I'm in a business group with a lot of entrepreneurs that are in all sorts of different types of industries. And they often have the exact same question. But I have the same answer. If you're tracking everything properly and you're set up to track your success, your budget should still be unlimited or something you're okay with losing.
Right.
And a lot of people just aren't tracking if it's working or not.
Right.
And so then they throw up their shoulders and say, I don't know. It's really important that you're set up to measure properly from the beginning. Otherwise, you're never going to know how to allocate your marketing budget.
Yeah. So let's talk about that then for a minute, because if they're doing some sort of ad campaign and they put heavy dollars in it, they shouldn't be doing anything else, right? They should isolate that to measure it effectively.
Depends on how you're going to measure things. If you're going to measure things on the last click through your website using Google Analytics, you should be fine running multiple things at once. Okay. But you have to make sure that your tracking is really clear and set up properly so that you feel comfortable with that. Now, if you're doing something offline at the same time, I'd say, yeah, that is probably a danger, that if you're putting up billboards all around town at the same time that you're scaling your Facebook spend, you could get really confusing signals.
Right. And it's always great to track, and tracking comes in various ways that you can track. Is that correct, Brian?
For sure. I mean, there's call tracking. There's obviously things like Google Analytics. There's other already more advanced tracking platforms.
Or the most intimate, just ask, how did you hear about me?
Although you'll often get a lie. It's amazing how many people say, I just clicked on an ad. And I'm like, nope, they definitely came in through an organic channel.
Yeah.
So a friend told me about it, and like, no, you definitely clicked on this ad. So a friend might have told you about something like it, or maybe even it, but you clicked on this ad. The good old drop down on your website of how did you hear about us? Not very effective. So I always tell people, make sure you've got analytics on your website, and probably even a second piece of analytics, something like a mix panel, to double check you see that you know what you're seeing is correct.
Yeah, on my, I have a tracking mechanism. It's just a simple question on my Calendly. It just says, how did you hear about us? And it's open-ended. So that means that I don't feed them, right? Sources, it's open-ended. And the effort comes through LinkedIn, and LinkedIn always pops up on there.
That makes sense.
So it really does match. So if you're tracking, it has to be relatable to that situation immediately, because they know immediately, right? They know.
For sure.
Okay. And so what is success for an e-commerce? What is success?
I'd say when you know your numbers. If you know that this is profitable, great. If you know this is unprofitable, okay, you learned something. When you know your numbers, I think you're in a place where you can grow and eventually get to that profitability space. But you have to know your numbers. There's some businesses that we work with, when we start working with them, ask pretty basic stuff of, what's your closing percentage and what's your lifetime value? And they kind of shrug their shoulders at me. And I'm like, we can't help you scale your business unless you know these numbers. So we're going to have to learn them together.
Yep. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I was about to say that the business owner or whoever is in charge of running these ad campaigns, whether it is a lead gen or e-commerce, the biggest thing that you do want to know is, what is your activity now? What is happening now? So that when you do click through or start a campaign, you will define and know what happens after the fact. And then
absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, because at the end of the day, that's the other thing, is every business is different. So the results will be different. So maybe a campaign for one business will create a bunch of conversions, where another campaign for a different business is going to be a little more. And maybe it's because of price point. It's cheaper on one. It's more expensive. It's a higher price point. There's so many dynamics, right, that play into an ad campaign.
For sure. And that's where it goes back, I guess, to that first piece of the puzzle I was talking about, CPM, CTR.
Yep.
I'm always initially looking at, what's my cost per click? What's my conversion on my landing page?
Yeah.
And maybe it's, what's my conversion on e-commerce? And getting those two levers to be aligned so that I'm profitable and I'm hitting my goals.
Okay. So you kind of gave us a little success story in the beginning. Can you share with us, as the company that you have now, not from where you were before, some success stories, or, a challenge you had and you guys overcame, or anything like that?
Yeah, well, of course, COVID was the biggest challenge. We lost half our business in a few months as we work with a lot of professional sports teams and restaurants, and they were all closed for business pretty darn quickly.
Yep.
So that was the biggest challenge. But I think everyone has kind of went through that together.
Yeah.
So I don't need to harp on that too much. I think probably the biggest challenge has just been the grind of taking that bad client to get that okay client, to get that good client, to get that great client. And we still take clients sometimes that aren't a great fit. When we look back, like, yeah, we probably shouldn't have even taken them on as a client in the first place. That won't put some yellow flags in that first call with us. But just grinding through those different personalities as we grew the business over time. We didn't pick a specific niche in that, like, we didn't just pick the sports industry only, and we're only going to target the sports industry. We picked basically a service, and that was direct response ads and paid social and organic social, and just really tried to keep that really tight offering. And that allowed us to work across a broad range of industries, which I actually think has been a big boost for our clients, in that we see tactics that work in one industry and then we can apply them in another. And that's been really interesting as we've grown.
Yeah. And so let me emphasize this, because I like that you said that, because I think a lot of people fail to realize that when you hire a professional agency that is doing ad campaigns for several clients across the board, that is basically what they're doing. They're looking at what works on this client, what works on this client, and really using that information, right? That information that is so beneficial, and applying it to the different other clients so they see the same success. Whereas if you're doing it yourself, there is no pool of information. There is no sourcing, right? You're on your own, and you're just testing what either your gut feeling says or what you have learned or picked up here or there, So
and the majority of people will say, my industry is really unique. It has to be done this way. And that is true of some industries. Like, there's definitely been people tell me that, and then I get into it and I'm like, wow, this is really freaking unique.
Yes.
But there are a lot of people that also tell me that, and I'm like, well, I just did this thing on this other client, and I think it's going to work over here, and I'm right.
Yeah. Yes. So people really need to keep that in mind, because I think that is a huge benefit for a digital marketing company. Whereas, again, you have resources and a pool of clients that you have tried things that work that you can apply to other clients. And it is a benefit. It is a huge benefit. So we want people to understand and think about that as we continue the conversation. Okay, Brian, so how do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, it's really simple. You can either find me on LinkedIn, which is pretty darn easy, or just go to our website, Matchnode, MATCHNODE.com.
Yes. And I have it in the scroll below, and I'll just reiterate it. It's Match, MATCH, Node, NODE.com. And also connect with Brian on LinkedIn, right? They can connect with you. Okay. Yeah. So Brian will welcome anybody's connection if you want to reach out. Can they just have a chat with you? Can they just, okay.
I'm happy to help. And if we want to get in an argument about boosted posts, we can do it on this podcast in the LinkedIn comments. That's no problem.
Awesome. I love it.
I'm happy to jump in.
That's awesome. Anything for anybody listening today? Do you have anything special that you're offering?
Well, I've said this a lot today. Know your numbers. Let's get your tracking set. And if you have those fundamentals in place, there's no reason that you can't discover what your ad budget should be, rather than just trying to pick a number out of thin air.
I agree. Because, it's proper planning, and, again, understanding the dynamics of your business and how much is that lead? How much is that lead worth to you? What is the lifetime value of that lead or that sell, whatever it is that you're doing?
And how many bad leads do you have to churn through to get one good lead?
Right.
Thinking about it that way too.
Yeah. And that's a great point. Okay. Well, thank you for joining me, Brian. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you having me, Kat.
Awesome. I'll see you later.
All right. Have a great one.
Thank you for joining me on the Stand Out and Grow podcast. This was really, really a beneficial conversation I had with Brian Davidson. Very helpful in digital marketing, especially with lead generation ads and e-commerce ads. So if you are just now connecting and listening, I would hit the replay, watch it from the beginning, and learn a lot about what Brian had to share. Thank you. And until next time, You got this.